Now, we're so looking forward to getting to know him a little bit better. Jeff Johnson is a gubernatorial candidate, and he is in the studio. Thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you for having me.
Good to have you here, Jeff. Now, you grew up in Detroit Lakes, right?
Yes.
And you still have a lot of family up there?
Yes, my family, pretty much all of my family is still up there. And, funny story, we're the Johnsons from Detroit Lakes. There's a few of them. My great-great-grandfather came here as a Langness and changed his name because there were too many Langnesses in North Dakota and changed it to Johnson. So we are unique now.
Yeah. Very original.
But yeah, I was born and raised there, went to school in Moorhead. My wife's from Crookston, so we're from northwestern Minnesota originally.
And you spent some time at Cargill?
Yes, I was an in-house labor lawyer, employment lawyer with Cargill for several years, had a couple firms in Chicago. And then about 16 or 17 years ago, I went out on my own. I've had my own business on the side of politics since then. I haven't practiced law in that period of time.
Whatever would inspire you to run for governor?
What a softball question that is. Thank you. For me, and I ran 4 years ago as well, and for me, it is about giving people a little more control over their own money and over their own businesses and over their own property and, frankly, over their own lives. I think we have really seen a trend, especially the last decade or so, in government where government seems to have this philosophy that its job is to help people make decisions about their own lives as opposed to serve people and let them make their own decisions. And so that's kind of a broad philosophy, but that's what drives me.
What do you see as some of the greatest challenges facing Minnesota right now?
I think the biggest challenge we have right now is our competitiveness going forward. When you look at trends, we're doing okay right now, but when you look at the trends of how we are competing with other states, especially similar states around the country from the standpoint of job creation and entrepreneurship and creation of what I would call meaningful middle-class jobs as opposed to the creation of lower skill or minimum wage jobs, we used to lead the field in that 20, 30, 40 years ago. That simply hasn't been the case recently. And I really do worry that if we don't make some changes, that is going to get worse, especially as this next generation starts making the decisions about where they want to settle in, where the opportunities are. That's a big one. And healthcare has to be near the top of the list. There are way too many people in Minnesota who don't feel like they have the choices that they need when it comes to health insurance.
I looked over some of the core principles that guide your thinking on government and various issues, and I found this very interesting. You write that the key to a stronger and more prosperous Minnesota, taking power away from the government, giving it back to the people, as you just discussed. Government is a creation of and a servant to the people, not the other way around. Minnesota's sovereignty and liberty are non-negotiable and must be aggressively defended from federal government overreach. We control our own destiny. And lastly, every life born and unborn is sacred. These obviously drive you. It seems like you have a very strong religious conviction as well.
Yes.
So tell especially younger listeners who might not be totally up to speed with your history and your accomplishments in the private sector as well as serving, being a public servant. But why Jeff Johnson?
I think if you mention where I have been in the past, so I'll start out there. I think if you look at my history, it does set me apart from the other candidates in the race, really on either side of the aisle. I've spent most of my adult life in the private sector, both as an employee for a period of time and as a manager for a period of time, and now being self-employed the last 16 or 17 years. But also during that time, I served 6 years in the Minnesota House, which was a self-imposed term limit, a self-imposed and a family-imposed term limit. We came to that decision together. And now I'm in my third and final term on the Hennepin County Board, which I have also been doing along with having this business on the side. And I think a lot of people like to talk about we need outsiders. Well, I think having that private sector experience is extremely important. But if you want to change government, which I do, I think it's important that you've also had that experience within government. Because if you are jumping in and really don't know how it works internally, it's really difficult to change it.
Wait, government does not work like business?
It doesn't, and government is not a business. I'm not one who says that, we should run government just like a business, because it's not. The point of a business is to make money, and that shouldn't be the point of government. But we could take some of the principles from the private sector, and I think watch government run much more efficiently and effectively and serve people better.
Well, give us an example of that. You mentioned healthcare. You think that's one of our greatest issues facing Minnesota. So how would you privatize even more healthcare? Or what are your ideas? What are your thoughts?
To me, it comes down to three pretty basic principles. Number one, the state knows better than the federal government how we should handle our health care. And hopefully we're moving in that direction where we are going to be given more freedom to do what we think works best for Minnesotans. Number two, the more competition in the marketplace, the better. So the more competition both between providers and insurers is better. And an example I'll give you of that is the federal government and certain people in the federal government have been talking now for years about opening up state lines so that you can buy your insurance across the country. I'm not convinced that they're going to get that done at the federal level, but we could do it regionally. We could enter into an interstate compact with Wisconsin and Iowa and North and South Dakota if governors work together to say, let's open up our boundaries so that our own citizens then can buy across state lines and create more competition so there are more options. And then the third piece is the more control people have over their own health care and their health insurance decisions, the better. And for me, that means starting to roll back some of the mandates that we've placed in Minnesota on what insurance has to look like. Mm-hmm. Obviously, the ACA, Obamacare, as some call it, created a lot of new mandates, but Minnesota goes even further than that. And frankly, it's good politics to say that we're going to cover everything under the sun, and people feel bad when you don't cover everything. But I just believe, who am I to say as governor that if someone believes the best thing for his or her family is more of a catastrophic coverage, who am I to say that they shouldn't be able to do that? And I think the more options we give people, the better off they're going to be with respect to their health care.
Jeff, talk a little bit about education. We have about 2 minutes left, but you wrote something I found really interesting. I believe that parents, not the state or the education unions, are the best decision makers when it comes to the education of a child. We must empower parents to make those decisions and allow teachers the freedom to teach without unending interference from politicians. Explain what you mean by that.
I can make it about as simple as possible. I believe in more school choice for parents. And I think we have to start where the schools are having the most trouble. We have some areas in the state, particularly in North Minneapolis, where the schools are not doing a particularly good job of educating kids. And I don't blame anyone for that because I think there are a lot of factors involved in that, some of which government can't control. But the more options you give to that single mom in North Minneapolis who just wants to send her little boy to a safe and decent school, the better. And to me, the starting point is you take these schools that are failing and you say, we are going to allow the parents who send their kids to that school to take that same money and send them somewhere else if they so choose.
Jeff, you're a supporter of Donald Trump. How do you think the president's doing?
I think he's doing a good job. I don't always agree with him. I have a different style than he is. As a Norwegian Lutheran from northern Minnesota, my style differs from New Yorker Donald Trump. But I think on policy, I agree with where he is moving the country, and I think he's actually showing some success in what he's doing.
When you say policy, you're talking about immigration, you're talking about tax reform. Which one specifically?
Well, I could go almost across the board. There are probably a few differences, but I agree with him on immigration. I agree with him on tax reform. I think I'm going to agree with him on infrastructure spending and health care. We may differ on this or that, and those issues will arise as they come up. But overall, I like the direction he's trying to take the country.
Someone on the text line asked about your business now. We know you served in the House. We know you left, you said, due to your family. What is your business now? We know you're trained as a lawyer.
Yes, and I haven't practiced in a while. I provide training to employers and to managers and to employees on harassment, discrimination issues, and then I do workplace investigations. So if someone is accused of harassment, I may go in as an independent and do an investigation and then write up a report. So business is kind of booming right now.
I was just going to ask.
I bet.
And
you got a pager.
For all intents and purposes, I've shut that business down now as of the beginning of the year, so I can focus on my job at the county and this race.
Okay,
Wow.
website where people can learn more?
JohnsonForGovernor.org.
JohnsonForGovernor.org.
Jeff, anything we didn't ask you that you want to get out?
No, I don't think so, other than go to caucus. Regardless of who you're supporting, go to caucuses tomorrow night. That we have a unique system in Minnesota where the grassroots actually gets to pick our candidates, so take advantage of that.
Jeff Johnson, Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jeff.
We appreciate it. Time now is 3:40.